You ever feel like your body just won't calm down? It almost feels stuck, right? And sometimes it shows up as snapping and frustration or irritability or anger. And so that is the fight response. And other times it feels like restlessness, anxiety, or feeling like you're just not able to relax. Overthinking, overworrying, right? So that's your system in flight. And I know it can be really frustrating to deal with these different states and feeling stuck in them for days and hours without any relief, right? And so, while things like journaling, talking about it, or even pushing through the sensations, it might feel like it's kind of helping a little bit, but they don't actually shift the nervous system. And so here's the good news. Once you can recognize which state your nervous system is in, whether it's fight, which is our boundary system, it's usually anger based, or flight, right, which is either moving away from something or even moving away from sensations internally, which is more fear based, it makes it really easy to begin to work with it directly and shift your nervous system. And so you can finally feel some real relief. And in today's video, I'll show you exactly how to tell fight from flight and the first steps you can take to work with it directly and move through them. And if you're new here, my name is Sarai. I'm a somatic experiencing coach. I've worked with hundreds of clients on their journey of nervous system regulation. And here's what I found. Nothing has created lasting transformation for me or for my clients quite like what I'm about to share with you today. So let's dive right in. And before we dive in, if you want to learn more about how to work with your nervous system in a deeper and more embodied way, I created a mini somatic course for you. You can get that down below in the show notes. It's a step-by-step toolkit with practical practices you can use every day to help your nervous system reset and finally feel at home in your body again. It's down below. So maybe you've noticed you get irritated or quick to anger, or maybe it's the opposite. You feel restless, you feel panicky, maybe you're overthinking, like you can't ever slow down. So here's what I want you to hear. There is nothing wrong with you for feeling anger or fear. These are very healthy emotions, right? And these states make perfect sense for the context your nervous system is experiencing. Yeah. So your body is sensing danger and protecting you wisely. So, good news, physiology is working. The issue isn't the response itself. The real problem is when the nervous system gets stuck in these states. Before I discovered and began applying the work of somatic experiencing, I could stay locked in these states for days, weeks, even months at a time. And that's what drains your system, your energy, and it leaves you feeling exhausted, disconnected, and powerless. So, the shift we want to make isn't about shutting down anger, fear, or restlessness. It's about allowing the system to experience what it needs to feel and then helping it complete the cycle so your nervous system doesn't get stuck in survival mode. And so here's the key. So we don't just want to jump into trying to release the fight response or the flight response. And there's good reason for this, right? So you want to be able to bring in enough counter vortex or what we like to call grounding, inner resourcing, or finding homeostasis in the nervous system, which I actually take you through a very in-depth exercise in the mini somatic course down below. So it's a full-blown experience. I highly recommend it. You can get that down below. So we want to do that first before we go into what I'm about to share with you next, right? Because if we try to release or complete when there's not enough footing, so to speak, then it can actually push us into more activation and we can get even more dysregulated. And it's more overwhelming and destabilizing. And essentially, it's just not helpful. So the analogy is kind of think about it this way. Like in weightlifting, if you try to squat a heavier weight than your body is actually warmed up for, ready for, right? It's either going to strain the muscles, it's going to injure them. It's just not going to be as a good of a lift, so to speak, if you really prepped your system, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the same thing with your nervous system. If you go straight into releasing without any preparation, your system can't actually hold it. And so that might actually sound a little bit more complicated than it actually is. But once you start doing this work over time, it becomes second nature. It doesn't require as much of like, okay, I got to do this and this. It actually becomes more organic and you're able to recognize it. And I think the thing to really point out is we're actually not doing anything new. Our nervous system was built to release and complete, and most of us haven't been taught how to. Yeah. So that's why in phase one of somatic work, we focus on building inner resourcing first. And like I said, we do that through counter vortex, intentionally bringing the opposite of what your body is doing, right? So we go towards more neutral to pleasurable. So your system has enough support to handle the charge. So once you can bring the activation down, whether it's fight or flight, down to at least a 5 out of 10, if it's a 5 and climbing, you need to ground more, but a 5 and coming down out of 10, then you can move into small, manageable releases to integrate them fully. And also in the mini somatic course, I also go through these exact principles in much more depth, like how to titrate things, how to go really slow. This is the essence, I would say, of somatic experiencing, is that everything is slow. You don't rush through things, you don't go fast, because that way it actually embeds in your memory network long term, so it can re-access the experience even once again if you, I shouldn't say if, you will feel activated again in your life, right? And so it can integrate more deeply. So you can get that down below. Now we're going to go into a couple of examples of helping the fight response complete and the flight response, and how to recognize and discern them both. And no matter what, though, the first thing that we want to do is to become aware, right? To become aware, to somatically track. And this is all phase one of somatic experiencing work. And so I really, really recommend, I know I sound like a broken record, but you really can't do well or good releases without learning somatic tracking, which you get in the free mini somatic course down below. So I'm just going to say that I'm saying it because it's really important. So this is what we all learn as students as we go through the somatic experiencing program. So I'm just going to put that out there. So now we're going to skip forward to the part where you've learned somatic tracking, you have integrated that, and you know how to do it well. Yeah. And so now you're ready for what we would consider phase two, actually releasing and completing survival responses, slow, micro activations. Yeah. And so, because remember, somatic work is all about slow and steady. It is not about overwhelm. It is not pushing the system beyond its capacity. So, just kind of keep that in mind. So, fast forward to, first of all, how do we recognize fight? So, we'll know our system is in fight because we feel the anger, we feel the frustration. You might even feel like some heat, right? So, temperature is always like a really good thing to check in with. And this is, that's why the somatic tracking is important, because then you start to track subtle signs in your system of what's happening, so you can recognize exactly what's going on. You might feel judgment towards others, right? You might even feel a little stuck in your head with your anger, right? And so the goal is to do what we talked about first, bring in counter vortex. So bring in neutral to pleasurable, so you can kind of bring things down, i.e., have your prefrontal cortex come back online, because that thing tends to, right? Your prefrontal cortex goes offline when we get too activated. So we want to bring everything down enough so it comes back online. This is what I mean by the integration, right? Because if you're too activated and your prefrontal cortex is offline, it's not going to integrate. Now let's get to the release part. So, something very simple. There are many ways to release the fight response, by the way. But one of the main ways is to basically help the somatic load move up and out of the body. And one of the best ways to do that with the fight response is just to gently push on a wall. So you'll literally put your hands on the wall, 1 foot forward, 1 foot behind you, make sure it's really stable. And then you'll just kind of lean into it. Hold for 10 to 30 seconds, release, come out of it, feel, track your body, and you should feel a mini release, and you'll do several cycles of that. Yeah. So that will help it finally release, and you'll feel yourself come back down into regulation. So for the flight response, right, you're going to feel more of an anxiety or fear, right? it's like overthinking, over worrying. It feels like a lot is happening. Sometimes it's like overstimulation, right? More fear based rather than anger. And I would say the telltale sign between the two is that you'll know because like your system almost wants to like move towards something, and where flight is like you want to move away from it, right? So with flight, same exact thing we just talked about with the fight response. You want to ground, somatically track, get the activation to a 5 going down below out of 10, right? And then you'll step into release work. And with the flight response, right? So basically, your body wants to run, it wants to escape, it wants to get away from something. And so, after you invite it to bring in counter vortex, ground, and settle, then you can do something as simple as shaking your legs for a few seconds, just letting the trembles come out, right? And as you do that, you'll kind of feel this natural downshift, and you can shake the legs for, 10 to 30 seconds, pause and then track a little bit, and then you can go into more cycles, and you'll kind of notice how the system will like slowly release it. Yeah. So as you can see with both of these, we're not thinking, we're not staying. I mean, we are thinking a little bit, right? Because somatic tracking actually does require some thinking. So, but we're not trying to solve why it's happening. We're not trying to get in our head through the cognitive door and figure out what's going on. We're keeping it simple. And it's like, my only job is to help the nervous system complete what is happening. So these small practices are how you begin to resource the system, regulate step by step, and teach your nervous system essentially, you have options here. Let me help you. That's what we're learning to communicate through the nervous system in somatic work, right? We're learning to communicate with it in the language it speaks, which is sensations, right? It's not cognitive dominant, it's body, nervous system, essentially the sensory motor system dominant. So we got to meet it in its language. And this is just the beginning. If you want to learn more about how to work with your nervous system, then go ahead and grab that free mini somatic course I've been mentioning throughout the video down below, so you can start learning practical practices that you can use every day to reset your nervous system and finally feel at home in your body again. And remember that your fight and flight responses are wise, and all they're doing is trying to protect you. All we want to remember is that we just don't want our system to get stuck there, right? We want to learn how to help it out, to help it release and complete. And so when you follow the right order of operations by building resources first, like somatic tracking, then releasing, you create a steady grounding shift that lasts. So I'm looking forward to seeing you on the inside of the free mini somatic course, and I'll see you in the next video.